your English podcast.
Back to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of sources you sent in today. They all seem to circle around this pretty powerful question. What if you could actually learn things much, much faster?
Right, and not just by, locking yourself away and studying for 12 hours straight.
Exactly. It's more about leveraging how our brains, well, actually work, rather than how we think they should work based on old habits.
Yeah, these sources definitely push back against that idea of just pure volume, pure rote learning. They argue pretty strongly, actually, that most of us are probably using methods that are kind of outdated, maybe even inefficient.
Okay, so let's dig into that. The idea seems to be that if you look at people who are genuinely rapid learners, folks who pick up complex stuff really quickly,
Uh-huh.
they're often using specific techniques. Things that aren't immediately obvious. It's
Yeah.
less about innate genius, maybe, and more about these brain tricks, you can call them, methods that line up better with cognitive science.
Exactly. And these often challenge our stereotypes about what proper studying looks like. So the mission today is really to pull out those key techniques from the materials you've gathered.
Let's do it. The sources suggest our usual ways might actually be holding us back. We need to move beyond just, I don't know, passively reading textbooks or watching lectures.
And right off the bat, one source throws a curveball. It talks about using sleep.
Sleep. Yeah,
Okay.
using sleep itself as a learning tool. That sounds different.
It really does challenge that notion that learning just stops the moment you close your eyes. The sources point out that specific sleep cycles, REM sleep, even other phases linked to things like theta waves, they're absolutely vital for memory consolidation.
Okay, so how do you actually use sleep then, according to them?
Well, the practical takeaway they offer is actually pretty simple, deceptively so. It's about intentionally reviewing the most critical information, the stuff you really need to lock in right before you drift off.
Ah, so you're kind of cueing your brain, telling it what to focus on overnight.
Precisely. You're essentially priming your brain to prioritize processing and strengthening that specific material while you sleep. It makes sleep an active part of the learning equation.
That's fascinating. Making sleep work for you. Okay, what about the environment? We're always told, find a perfectly quiet library corner. But one source flips that. Says train your brain for chaos.
Yeah, that one's definitely counterintuitive, isn't it? But think about it, the real world isn't silent. It's full of distractions.
True. Very true.
So what they propose is using controlled, low-level distractions. Things like instrumental music that's just barely noticeable, or maybe that ambient coffee shop buzz you can get online.
Okay, so you expose yourself deliberately.
Right. The idea is to gradually build up your brain's ability to maintain focus despite that background noise. It's almost like weight training for your concentration muscle. You build tolerance through calculated exposure.
So not eliminating distractions, but learning to navigate them. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Once you're in that focused state, though, how do you make the information actually, stick?
That brings up encoding, which the sources really emphasize. They talk about engaging multiple senses whenever you can,
How so?
like linking new information to strong visuals or sounds or even physical actions or the environment you're in. Creating multiple sensory pathways, they argue, makes the memory trace much richer, much easier to retrieve later on.
More hooks to hang the memory on,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. And that's where things like the memory palace technique come in. You associate bits of information with familiar places and objects, say, in your own home. It leverages that multisensory and spatial encoding powerfully.
Right. I've heard of that. Makes sense. And tied into making things stick, the sources really hammer on active self-testing, don't they? Not just passively rereading your notes.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Rereading is sneaky. It gives you this false sense of familiarity, like, oh, yeah, I know this.
But you don't really. Not until you try to recall it.
Exactly. The sources stress that the effort involved in actively trying to retrieve information from memory, quizzing yourself, even if you struggle, even if you get it wrong initially, that process fundamentally strengthens the neural connections. It's way more effective than just glancing over the page again. That struggle is the learning actually happening.
Okay, so effortful recall is key. What about structuring the study time itself? The sources seem keen on learning like a sprinter, not a marathon runner. Short bursts.
Yeah, they argue our brains just aren't wired for hours and hours of continuous high intensity focus. It doesn't really work that well long term.
So shorter sessions are better.
They recommend short, really intense bursts of work, maybe like 25 minutes followed by a quick 5-minute break. The Pomodoro technique that's mentioned. This lines up better with our natural cognitive rhythms.
Right, focus hard, then reset.
Exactly. You maximize your focus during the work sprint, and then you use the break for actual mental recovery. They argue this leads to much better retention overall and helps you avoid burnout compared to trying to just, you know, grind it out for 3 hours straight.
So it's not just one magic trick then. It's about combining these different elements.
That's what's really interesting. The sources suggest the real power boost comes when you start integrating these strategies. You use sleep for consolidation. You train your focus in different environments. You encode things deeply using senses and maybe a memory palace. You prioritize active recall. And you structure your sessions into sprints.
Weaving it all together.
Yeah, weaving them together deliberately, maybe tweaking them based on what you're learning or your own style. That's where they suggest you can unlock really significant gains in how fast you learn and how well you remember it.
But underpinning all of this, there's something else, isn't there? The sources talk quite a bit about mindset.
Oh, absolutely. That's presented as the foundation, really.
Yeah.
It's having a growth mindset, this core belief that your abilities aren't just fixed, that you can actually get better through effort and using the right strategies.
So seeing challenges differently.
Exactly. Viewing mistakes or errors not as, failures, but as crucial feedback.
Yeah.
Information telling you where to adjust. Shifting that internal voice from, I'm just bad at this, to, okay, how can I approach this differently? That shift is presented as vital.
And finding some enjoyment too, maybe.
Yes. Finding joy in the process itself, celebrating the small wins along the way, those are highlighted as really powerful motivators for sticking with it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So just to quickly pull those threads together from the sources, faster learning isn't just about logging more hours. It's about smart techniques, like using sleep strategically for consolidation, training your focus, even amidst some noise, and coding information deeply using multiple senses, Maybe techniques like memory palaces.
Prioritizing that active recall over passive review.
Right, structuring study time into focused sprints.
And grounding it all in that resilient, growth-oriented mindset, believing you can improve.
And these aren't just theoretical ideas floating around, are they? The sources frame them as practical steps.
Yeah, definitely. Things you can actually start trying out, integrating into how you learn pretty much immediately.
So, thinking about this for everyone listening, if the real key to absorbing information faster isn't just the traditional grind, but using these smarter techniques that actually align with how your brain is built, how could intentionally bringing in seemingly unrelated parts of your life, like, say, how you manage your sleep or the everyday sounds around you, how could that fundamentally shift your approach to learning something new, starting today?